Thank you, thank you. Hello. This side or that side?
After you. Hello. Oh yeah,
What
the
a
mic.
crowd.
Yeah, what a crowd. Are you, well, what do you think, crowd, to meet Mr. Nick Cave? It's nice, eh? Yeah.
We've yet to find that out. Does
Yeah.
this work? Does it work without it? Anyway,
It does work. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very excited to be here. This has been sprung on me a little bit. I didn't realize there would be so many people. But let's see how it goes. But I'm very excited to be here.
But are these all fans?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Whoa!
Well,
How
let's
does that
do it
feel,
let's
Nick,
do it in another way. Who aren't fans?
Right. What?
We'll win you over.
What is it like to have fans?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. Mostly it's good. Mostly it's amazing. But occasionally it's not. And because I attempt some kind of private life, but that's pretty much not really on the cards most of the time. So, you know, you wake up and you're not feeling too good. It's a bad hair day. You walk out on the street and someone wants to do a selfie with you, and
Yeah, you don't feel like
you
it.
don't want to be confronted by this person all the time. So that's a pain in the ass, actually.
Yeah,
But
but at the same time-
it's beautiful to be loved and adored.
Yeah. Well, you have to. It must be something that treats you well, since you're so very known, to have fans and be famous.
Well, to be a musician and to be able to create and do what I like and be free to speak what I like and to be essentially free to create and to be paid for it and to have people actually interested in what you do. Things couldn't be better, you know. I know a lot of musician friends that came up at the same time as me. It didn't happen in the same way. My career happened mostly through a certain application that I had naturally towards things, but also a lot of happy accidents, you know. And I managed to be in a position where I can do what I like, and this is, you know, I don't take that lightly, you know. I'm just sorry, but my response to that is that every opportunity I have, either to make a record or to play a concert, or indeed to do something like this, I do with my whole heart, in an absolute way, as if it's the last concert I'll ever do, because I think any other way of approaching music or art is a squandering of an opportunity that's almost sinful, I would say, to do. I thought I'd introduce that word early. But you know, I sometimes see bands on stage occasionally, and their hearts aren't in it, or they're, you know, and I find that to approach the job at hand half-heartedly as in a way a definition of sin.
So there we have it, sin, and you.
I just thought I'd throw that in to get you going.
I know.
To get you going on religion.
We already started, right? But also you being a creator. And if we talk about creating, I must think, Genesis comes to mind, the Bible book. And here we are in Voorlinden, and you have those wonderful devilish creatures made out of clay. And that's Genesis right there.
It is exactly that, yeah. It's beautifully put.
Thank you. But Adam was made out of earth.
That's right. You know, and there is something about sitting with a lump of clay that is as primal as it can be. That for me, it feels like going back, not just historically, not just, but right back to my childhood of playing with my own dirt. And there's something about that, and to be able to create something beautiful from that is an extraordinary thing to be involved in. Because the clay is nothing, and it holds no promise, in a way, and you create something from it. So it is the original act. It is the original act.
Can you take us back to the moment where you started this original act again?
With these ones?
Yeah.
Or? Yeah. Well, my mother, who loved. I used to make these figurines when I was a teenager. My father was the head of adult education in Victoria, and he had these different classes that you could go to in the summer break. And for some reason, I went to a clay workshop and learned how to make clay and fire it and glaze it and that sort of thing. It was only like a 2-week course or something like that, but I loved doing it. And I made a bunch of little figurines that my mother loved. I said before, I think it was my mother saw that I was actually, it was like maybe the first indication that as this particular child had something going for them. You know, I was just a little ball of trouble before that. And suddenly, okay, he can do something. And she loved these things, and she surrounded herself, even to the day she died. She had these little figurines that I made around the chair where she sat, you know. But coincidentally, as these things happen, COVID happened, the pandemic happened. I decided that I, for some reason, wanted to go into the studio and make some more of these little figurines, because I suddenly didn't have a job. You know, there was no touring. I couldn't make music, so I suddenly had this spare year, and so I thought I'd just go into the studio and make these things. And on the first day that I'd sort of booked to go in with this friend of mine into a studio, my mother died. She died at 92 in Australia. And I was unable to, it was the pandemic, I was unable to go to Australia. No one was allowed into the hospital. It was a bleak pandemic death of an old lady. And it was very upsetting. And I was on the phone and I was ringing up the guy whose studio I was going to use. And my wife, Susie, said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Look, you know, I'm cancelling this day in the studio." And she said, "No, you go and do your work." And I'm like, "Well, my mother just died."
Right.
She's saying, "No, you go and do what you're supposed to do." So I went into the studio, and my wife's extraordinarily intuitive in this way and understands what makes me better. And I started working with the clay, and almost immediately was the sort of pain that I felt was sort of absorbed into this earth that we're talking about. And it was incredibly helpful to me to sit there and just make these little things. And that was basically how it started. And weirdly, the first thing I wanted to do was I went in there with the idea of making a little vase that had attached to the vase a saint boiling in oil. So it was
Why not?
it was a little saint going like that in a and there was a little slip. They're called a slip vase. It's a vase for one flower, which is a Staffordshire ceramic style of Staffordshire. They make these little vases, which didn't work out, but the act of making it was just so therapeutic. Sounds like a lazy word. It was more than therapeutic. It was deeply healing in a way.
Was it also mother?
Was it?
Your mother?
Do you mean? In what way do you mean?
Was she there?
Yeah, well,
because she was the one who responded.
Yeah,
nicely when you were young.
Suddenly it was for my mother, and I think in the same way as something like recording Ghosteen, a record I made that was a direct response to the death of my first child. I felt, excuse me, at the time that my child was there, and that record was, in a way, an attempt to communicate with him, and I think on some subconscious level, and I think that's probably what was going on with my mother,
Then this series turned out to be about the devil.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I mean, it's quite difficult to talk about these things because these decisions are not deep decisions, or they are deep decisions, but they're not conscious decisions. I essentially woke up one morning and I discovered this red glaze called radiant red that had this bright popping look, and I thought, I want to make something with red, and I thought that I'll do the devil. The devil is red. I'll do a little red man. It's going to be beautiful. And that's when I started doing the devils. I'd done the two before that weren't very good. There was the saint in boiling oil that I tried to do, and then there was a witch burning at a stake, which was also a little vase. But I suddenly woke up thinking, I'm going to do the devil because I want to use this red. And
just because of that?
Because of the red,
or was there some subconsciousness?
Well, I think with all of these sort of things, there's a subconscious, a subconscious influence happening on everything that we do, especially artistically. I mean, art is just a completely magical, mysterious thing in my view, the artistic process. Anyway, I sat down and made the first one, which was the devil and sailor, and you can see that little devil is red. And then I made that one, and then I wanted to make another devil because I love that one, but the idea of the devil took over, and I stopped doing him red and did him in normal human colors. And then the devil became very personal. And
in what way?
I started off the life that it became like the life of the devil. The devil was a series of figurines that tracked the life of a man. And initially it's a general story. A man is born, he gets a girl, he does manly things, he fights a lion, he goes off to war, he comes back from war, he finds a bride, he does manly things, right? With his devil's horns. But there's a cutoff, a distinct cutoff that I didn't know even was coming when I was making these little figurines, where the devil kills a child. And it's suddenly a crack in the whole progression to something that did not just become acutely personal to myself, but also the point of devastation I think, that happens in all of our lives at some point or another. It may not have happened to you yet, but it will happen to you. There will be a point in time where your life collapses in on itself and that you will not be able to recognize yourself afterwards. You become something different. And that's what, in my view, this life of the devil tracks. And in my view, at least, of things, that the direction of travel is towards forgiveness. And I think that that's what, as human beings, our life should, at least, and does move towards, the need for forgiveness.
Let's go back to this.
Tell me if I'm not
Figurine.
making sense at any point.
You are making
because-
sense.
okay.
Nick Cave is making sense.
I don't know.
right? Yeah. But we go back to the figurine where the devil kills his firstborn. That's what it is, right? Do you remember when you start making this particular piece, and how that was for you?
Yeah, well, the sort of, it seems silly, really, to say that I didn't understand what was happening with these figurines at the time of making them, but it's actually true. When I'm writing a song, or when I'm, or the same thing with the sculptures, I'm not trying to make a point. I'm just trying to write the most beautiful line I can. I don't really care about its meaning as such. I just want it to have some sort of emotional resonance. And sometimes I write a line and I don't know what it means, but I think, fuck it, it's a beautiful line, and you hope to God that some sort of meaning attaches to this line eventually, which if the line is good, it normally does. You just don't understand what the line is telling you at the point of creation. And this was very much like that with the figurines. These figurines, some of them, not all of them, but some of these figurines are based on existing Staffordshire figurines that were made in the Victorian period. They're equestrian, equestrian figurines, and there is Isaac and Abraham and Isaac religious Staffordshire, and I saw that, and I thought, I'll do something like that and make it the devil, and he's doing that. I didn't really understand the full implications of that until actually the end. That last one, where the devil asked to be forgiven, I was really making that with some understanding of what this whole project was about. Which it was that. It was asking for some kind of, it was a work of art that was asking on a personal level some kind of absolution from or asking or attempting to say I'm sorry for what happened with my child. To my child. And in the process of making that final sculpture of the child reaching down to forgive the dead adult or the devil, felt some sort of resolution in some kind of way. It's a difficult thing to describe, but for me, at least personally, when I make a work of art, it leads, I think, all our art, or for me at least, at the end of all my art is the asking for forgiveness in some way.
All of it.
Well, in a way, it's attempting to redress the balance of things by putting beautiful things into the world. It's the very best I can do of myself, which I regard as a broken. When we were talking about sin before, I see sin and suffering to be much the same thing on some level. Something that you wouldn't have heard in your childhood, where
childhood,
your
yeah.
Protestant childhood. You know, I see a conflation between the two, and I think when we create art, we're doing the best we possibly can. We're doing the best we possibly can with the sort of clay that we are. You know, the original brokenness of ourselves, and so in respect, that art is a form of absolution to our broken nature. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's really harsh on you as a human being, in a way, because you're asking for forgiveness constantly.
Yeah.
And
I
art
think that's
gives you
what life.
absolute-
I think that's what life is, and provided we receive some absolution, then I think it's a good thing. I think it's better than to walk through life unaware of our nature, you know, and whatever. And, you know, it's.
Some would say that's deeply religious of you.
Well, you say that as if it's something bad. You know, I mean, personally,
It can be bad,
yeah,
as we all know.
It can be bad, and I can feel the sort of emotion in you when you talk about that sort of thing, because most people who have question religion, or the most staunch atheist, I don't know what you are in that respect, but the most staunch atheist has generally had a religious upbringing, you know.
Well, the funny thing, and that's it about me, I told you, I think I struggled with religion in the strict way for 40 years. And I must say that in the last year or so, I sensed that things were about to change.
In yourself.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. It's very interesting that you say that.
And then Voorlinden asked me to interview Nick Cave, who is a deep...
See?
The creator has a master plan.
Well, that could be true. That could be true. But what's really interesting about that is that today it's a legitimate intellectual discussion is to be had on religion. 10 years ago, forget about it.
Right.
If you sat down at a dinner table 10 years ago and said something about Jesus, you'd be laughed out of the room by everybody. Now only half the people will laugh you out of the room. But there is a genuine, I feel that there is a genuine resurgence of interest in the idea of religion, and that religion, for various different reasons, has been put back on the table as a legitimate direction of travel.
How come, you think?
I personally think this. I get into all sorts of trouble for saying this, I guess, but I think that the secular world, what the secular world promised, they didn't deliver. And I think the world has devolved into hostility, people finding their religious nature in politics, that there are all sorts of walls that are going up, that we are constructing, that stands in the way of ourselves and a genuine spiritual or transcendent experience. The concept of mysticism, these sorts of things have been eradicated by the secular world, and where we are to some degree lost. And I think you can see that playing out very much in society at the moment, in our politics, all the rest of it. It is, and I think that there are just people who, perhaps like yourself, I don't know, but that are agnostic, but they have a spiritual yearning. There is a yearning for something else that has not been answered. That yearning, that spiritual longing that I think most people, or many people have, has been seen as a kind of irrelevance. It's just magical thinking or sort of intellectual dishonesty, or we don't have to worry about that sort of thing. We are what we are, and I think people are tired of that in a way. I'm just seeing it all. I'm seeing it all the time. Maybe I'm a little bit of a magnet for, or give people permission to talk about these sorts of things, but I do see that it's different. It's different than it was 10 years ago.
It also has to do what you say about the yearning you feel and emptiness. I mean, my father would love this because he sends me the story of the lost son, the New Testament, every other month. Don't tell him this. And he would say, as many people would say, and you yourself are telling me this, there's a sense of yearning, and that's true.
But just to say, him sending the story of the lost son is an act of deep love.
That's what
the father calling the son back, or the son returning, is an act. Because it was the wayward son that he, in the biblical story, that he loved most. The good son didn't need his.
He was just there.
He was just there, doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Talking about forgiveness.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just to let you know, you should let your father off the hook. Go home and give him a hug.
It's true.
He's going to really love this.
I know. If he was here, he would. I know. Yeah. Back to the figurines. Ja. Of zal ik nog iets anders vragen? You don't understand that.
No, I don't.
But shall I continue with me, or But back to the figurines. Let's do that. Because part of it's not all God and nice and yearning. It's also the devil.
Yeah.
And I really want to go back to, because it's such a strong figure, the devil. The devil is everything. It's Assad. It's Hitler. It's a part of you and me and everybody in the audience.
Yeah, look, this, it's a part. Look, it's a difficult thing to say, but it is a part of Assad. In the same way as it's a part of me and it's a part of every other human being. It's in my view, there is an essential. There's essential goodness that exists in us all, and over that there are layers and layers of strategies and way that we make our way in the world that suffocates that goodness or builds up walls of that essential creative spark, which is essentially good in my view, or the spark of the world, I think, is essentially good. Within that, there are great evils that move around the world and that collect within us and that we are capable of. And anyone in this room who doesn't think they are capable of the greatest evils possible doesn't really understand human nature. Or anyone who under the right circumstances or the wrong circumstances isn't Assad on some level, has a misunderstanding of what human nature is, our capacity for evil. So that runs through the figurines, but what I wanted those figurines to be was something that was essentially approachable and recognizable. So the figurines aren't. You don't look at them and feel you're separate from them. This is some evil, great evil you're looking at. You're looking at something that's actually just very human, comical, quizzical, funny, and tragic. So it's once again, without getting too much into this, I often conflate or often sin and suffering are very much connected in some way to me. Mostly you can track evil back to innocence if you just take the steps back from cause and effect.
And is suffering always connected to sin?
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know. I think there are. I've found that there are things that happen to us that are extraordinarily devastating, that we learn we learn how to be better because of that. So maybe not necessarily. I don't have to think about that. I'm not sure.
Well, if we go back to the story of Abraham and Isaac, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son, his firstborn.
Yeah, it's a terrible story.
And a terrible question to ask.
Yeah, yes. As you know, Genesis is just full of these stories. You're like, what kind of a God asked that of anyone? And this is a very good question. I don't know the answer to these sorts of things.
Well, if suffering...
I've heard, read and many apologies for this particular scene, but I don't understand that scene.
Well, it has to do with there's God, the utmost of all things, and then there is life as it is, even your firstborn.
Yeah.
So who do you choose?
Well, I don't see God in that way. I see God, I see God as embedded within the world and within us and in everything good and bad. I don't see God as some figure that's sort of a peripheral figure that sits outside us and kind of looks down and we're his kind of playthings. I think God is embedded in the world and is essentially good and that suffers along with us. If such a thing exists, by the way. I can't say one way or the other.
Do you pray?
Yeah, I do.
What is that like for you?
I'm not very good at it. I find it quite difficult to do. I find it, sometimes it's a deep thing, sometimes I'm slightly embarrassed by it. Sometimes it feels some kind of connection, sometimes it's speaking into the void or speaking to myself. It's all sorts of different things. But I do try and pray.
And
I mean, mostly, at least, it connects me to certain people. I do, when I pray, I do bring to mind people who've passed on, and I have a whole collection of people actually that I sort of connect to when I do pray, and so even if I'm praying to nothing, it feels like essentially a good thing to do.
Because how does it make you feel?
All of those things: connected, disconnected, embarrassed. There's a lot about religion that's extraordinarily difficult to swallow, you know, and which is what I like about it, you know.
If it's difficult to swallow sometimes, then it becomes more interesting, or
Yeah, it's fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So what is difficult to swallow if it?
well,
If it's about religion.
I go to church. I go to church on a Sunday. I happen to have found a church that is the most beautiful. It's the most beautiful hour and a half or hour and a quarter of my week, but it's extraordinarily affecting. The music, the singing is unbelievably beautiful. The organist is amazing. I mean, if you can somehow allow yourself to feel it, it's an extraordinary experience. But within that service, there's a whole bunch of claims that are being made that are like, you know, like when I used to go to church, I've always gone to church or tried to go to church, even back in the day. I've tried to go to church off and on. And most of the time I'm just like, really? You know, what? You know, and I'm mostly I was mostly embarrassed to go, but I was trying to find something that answered this particular yearning we were talking about. Now I found a place where I can relax, and within one of my songs, from a certain angle and a certain light, the whole thing kind of makes sense, you know. And what I love about the church that I go to, it is completely unembarrassed about the claims that it is trying to make. It's not concerned about the current climate or what's going on in the world at the moment. It couldn't care less. It has something that's been going on century after century, the same prayers, the same, you know, and that collected wisdom, communalness of the whole thing is deeply, deeply affecting. You know, I mean, I don't mean to go on about this too much, but you're really, the thing I love about it, like when I play a concert, people say, this is the closest thing I've come to a religious experience. Sometimes they say that, or you know, this is my spirituality, for example. And I understand that, but it's not mine. You know, I feel it in some way. I'm at the center of that because I'm creating the music and so forth. So for me, this thing of going to this place where this idea has been, rightly or wrongly, routinely and ritualistically, happened every day for the last, this church is 900 years old, the same prayer, the same prayers being said, the same, the idea that you're going to that this thing happens whether you go or not. It's not dependent upon you. You're joining something. It's extremely affecting to me. So I find that I've found a place that I can go where that sort of thing starts to make sense. Sorry if I'm going on.
No,
you need to steer me off this stuff because I'll go on about it all.
It's really, you have me with.
I mean,
with
the problem with the Anglican religion, or the Protestant religion, especially in Britain, I don't know what it's like, is that they're trying, they don't know what they want, and they're trying to relate to people, to the current ideas.
Like to modernize.
To modernize, and people don't like it. People, you go to one of these churches and there's nobody in them, you know.
So, but what do you do? You go in. It's very old. They have the songs for ages, and now and then you're like, oh my God, this is just not me, but you just ignore that.
this may or may not be a good thing, I don't know, but the more you go, the less you feel that way. So there's, so there is a sort of slow brainwashing that happens.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, it's a heart.
That was my point for 40 years.
Yeah, but I don't think the skeptical or rational side of your nature is necessarily the greatest thing we have. I think the sides of our nature that are to do with the imagination and to do with the absurd and to do with the uncertain, this is where creativity actually exists. And so to go to church for me is, it's an enormously creative act. It's not kind of herd-like or like people see it as. It's extraordinarily creative. It requires my mind to accept all sorts of things, you know. And I find that that is the best part of my nature, rather than this, it doesn't make sense, this is stupid, this doesn't make sense, all of that sort of stuff. That I find this to be the least interesting aspect of what I can be.
That's
Hallelujah.
Great. Yeah. That's right. Thank you. We have some, do we have some, really? It's nice to wrap it up with that. Hallelujah. Are there some questions in the audience? Yes. Can you please stand up?
This guy.
I know. Suit guy.
I know him. He's like my brother.
What?
I don't know if we've ever spoken, have we? Sorry? Have we ever spoken?
Not for long.
No, but I mean, he's in the audience. This tall man in a tie that's in the audience. So, how are you?
Fine. Now a little bit stressed because you just outed me in front of everyone, but thank you. So I have so many questions, but I can just ask one. That would be the first time I saw the exhibition in Brussels. You said that the stories didn't unfold to you in the beginning, right? You started doing other figurines, but then you've made the one about the sailor and then the other parts of the story. But when I saw the whole set, I started thinking to myself, there are certain parts of the story that I don't understand the motive of the hero, of the devil. For example, why does he actually kill his own son? What happened? Was there something during the war? I felt like there was like a sin missing. Why did he kill his son? And the second, were there other parts of the story that you consider that you will make, but you opted out of the idea?
Well, no is to the answer to the second part, and there's a book that's been made that tells the story. It's a beautiful book. I'm not just selling the merch, but there is absolutely a beautiful book that's been made that goes along with it, that you can see here, that tells the story. And so it sounds like I'm really flogging this, but so we have the story here, and it's like a children's book, and these become the illustrations of the story in some kind of way. And when it gets to that particular figurine, I think it says very quickly, hang on.
Yeah.
But because it was in his nature to do so, the devil killed the child. So it's a sudden shift there. You have to read the whole story, but it's.
And you can buy the book.
It's a very sad line, you know.
It is.
In the book, and it changes everything. So it's a lovely question, but buy the book. I'll even sign it for you.
Can you explain if and how, during this creative process of making the exhibit, your understanding towards forgiveness has developed?
What you want to know through the process of making the statues, how my understanding of forgiveness has developed? Well, I think, first of all, from making these, this sounds strange, but from making these sculptures, it was a long meditative period. It's 2 years to make these figurines. I think it drew to the surface my needs, and that there was something that was, there was something that I was feeling that I couldn't work out, and part of that was, I think, a need to be forgiven. And maybe that has attached itself in some way to my a kind of renewed interest in religion, as we were talking about. So I don't know how the idea has grown, but I certainly feel that there is, on some level, a possibility to be redeemed in some way. That's what I think art does. That's what I think that art does for us. When I stand in front of these figurines, I feel it's a form of redemption, because I put my anxieties into something and display them in front of people. And that is a kind of, that is what for me is the saving sort of grace of art, really, is that it redeems us by the fact that it is just there, you know.
Say some people go to your concerts and see this as a religious experience, but it's not for you. And if you go to church, all these people see this as a religious experience, but maybe it's not for God either. So,
Awesome.
So these people, maybe they create their own God.
It's true. I'm not here as an advocate for the existence of God. That's not, you know, that is a question that's entirely up in the air, and on some level, a detail. You know, I think that at its very least, the utility of religion, apart from when it's pounded into you with a whole lot of, you know, awful ideas, is a good thing. I've seen that often, and I feel that in myself.
It's man-made.
Well, you could say that. I personally think that religion is, you know, our clumsy, fumbling attempt to articulate the numinous, you know, and that's what it is. But that doesn't mean to say that the numinous, that God doesn't exist within that. I just think it's an imperfect. We are imperfect creatures, and of course we're not going to create an institution that is perfect. It's going to be deeply flawed. The church is deeply flawed, but that doesn't mean to say that negates the existence of God, you know, or that God exists. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is man-made, but I don't know. Just to say something is man-made feels like you're saying that it's not worth something.
No, I don't mean that. I think it's great. It's a great thing men can make. Yeah.
My question is about storytelling. You wrote a book, a novel. Quite a lot of your songs have strong story, recurring characters. This Devil series is a story thing. How important is it for you to be able to take the time and a room, now it's actually a physical room in the exhibition, to tell a story?
How important is it to tell stories, essentially? I've just always done that. I relate to the world in that way. I relate to the world symbolically, metaphorically. That's how I see the world in a way, like a parable. parabolically. Is that a word? I don't know. But anyway, I see the world in those terms. I visualize the world. These are all sort of narrative things, and I understand the world by telling stories. This is why I love, not to go back, I'm not going back to religion here, but that's why I love the Christian story, because it is a story. It is a story that exists. It's not some vague spiritual thing that floats around. It's a story, and I love that about it. And so, yeah.
The main characters in this story, I mean, I haven't seen the exhibition yet, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to see, but I know that the God in Wild God, for instance, which is one of my favourite songs ever.
It's better than Lust for Life?
Earlier song in there,
I couldn't hear that last bit.
so there's an element from earlier songs in there.
Yes.
So he seems to be he is a recurring character. And I was wondering how these recurring characters relate maybe to the devil or to other.
Well, I think the devil character is a recurring character too throughout the songs. I mean, in different sorts of ways, but for sure, I do reference. I see the whole thing as just this big swirling kind of tapestry of interrelated stories. My songs, they're always going back and reanimating old themes and bringing them back in and so forth. So, that's what's happening. Yeah. I think this lady at the back has been trying to ask a question.
Is be here. My name is Farah. I'm a primary school teacher, and I heard you talking about your father being an educator, and we also talked about yearning. But I wonder, do children yearn already, or do you think that happens in a later stage in life?
Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful question.
Yeah. They do.
I don't. I'm just trying to. I just think that I always had this feeling. I didn't know what it was, but it's a sort of feeling of absence. That there's something being incomplete in some way. I've always had that feeling. And I guess it's sort of manifested itself in different ways as I've gone through my life. But so, yeah, maybe we're born yearning. Certainly sounds good.
Yeah.
It's the name of my next record, actually.
Right.
Born Yearning.
Well, Born Yearning it is. This is the end of this segment. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, maybe we could ask a few more.
Yeah?
Yeah, it feels short to me.
Yeah.
It's short.
It is
Are we
short.
allowed to go longer?
Okay, in the midst,
We're allowed to do
shall
more.
we do 5 more then?
As you wish.
I don't know.
We've got to do this guy who's standing up there.
Yeah, the
like-
guy's standing up already.
What it comes in free, it's short, but it comes in free. What was the first sculpture you made after this series with the devil, and how did it make you feel? And can I buy it?
What was the next sculpture after this series? I haven't made one, but you can buy it.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive conceptual piece.
Hier vooraan.
I would like to relate to the religious experiences with your shows, with your concerts. And I have a question, will the Wild God return to Europe maybe for a festival summer?
Yes. That was easy.
As far as I understand, forgiveness is a big part of your series, right? And I have a question, what does forgiveness mean to you? Who has the ultimate authority to forgive someone and other unforgivable things?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, we have our own personal capacity to forgive. Some are better at it than others. I think that it is the best of us if we can forgive. I think I've heard extraordinary stories of, I was just reading the other day, I'm going to get this wrong, but a mother whose son was murdered by some crazy guy, not crazy guy, some guy. She went to the prison, she talked to the guy, she forgave him. The guy, that they became very close. The guy came back, lived next to her in a house. She adopted him as a son, essentially her son's murderer. And when she died, he gave he read the eulogy. This is radical forgiveness at its best, and this is a very, very beautiful thing. But most of us aren't able to do that, unfortunately. But that is human forgiveness at its best and most moving. Is there an ultimate power that forgives? Once again, I don't know about these sorts of things. I find, I don't want to keep going back to religion and church and all of this sort of stuff.
Well, everybody likes it.
But I do, well, maybe some do. Some are just pretending. But I do feel a feeling of a kind of lifting of I find in church a place to take my sort of sorrowfulness and feel a kind of lifting of that through that service. A kind of, it feels sort of redeeming in some kind of way. Without it being a moralistic thing, I just feel better. And you could say forgiven, but whether that's just my own mind or part of a man-made construct or whatever, I don't know. The whole thing, exciting thing about me about religion and the concept of God and Christianity and all these sorts of things is I just don't know. I don't have the answers for these things. It's a deeply mysterious thing. Yes, sir.
One little question. Since it's near the end, would you be so kind to have a song?
I knew you were a troublemaker. I don't have my lyrics here.
Nick, I need my glasses. Could you perhaps tell a little more about matter, about the material, about the creative process, about what you like most, for the making of the volumes of the figurines or the adding of the colors? And how
you mean in regard to the making of these figurines? What aspect of it do I prefer? I prefer the completion, right? The final thing you do is paint the things gold. You put the gold on. That's the final firing. And then you open up the kiln, and these little guys are sitting there, and you don't know if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. And you look in, and these little things look out at you, and they look beautiful, and it feels like a completion of things. That sense of completion is extremely important, I think, in the creative process. I do know, we know, looking at Xavier here, we know artists that don't have that idea. They're just creating. I don't like that for myself personally. I like the idea that I work on a project and there's closure to that project, and then there's a period of rest, and then we start the next project. And that opening of the kiln and seeing is to me the final moment, and it's that final moment that I value deeply. It's like you've done something of some value. All the anxiety and the uncertainty is over, and you have the thing. It's the same with making a record. It's that time of the mastering comes back, you listen to the record, you send it out there to you or to anyone else, and they can do with what they wish. But so it's that sense of closure. You know, because it's all about the striving and the creative process. This is what the world is about. Everyone's busy doing things. This is the great sort of vitality of the world. But I think we need to feel. But I do like that sense of completion. This is what I worry about mostly with AI and things like ChatGPT. This is a different subject, but there is this idea that the creative process itself is simply a, how would you say, like an interference on the road to the product itself. What we have with these song generators or apps or ChatGPT itself, we only care about the product. We don't care about the striving or the sense of striving. This is an unbelievably destructive idea in our society, and that's just growing every day. It's growing more and more. That the striving, the artistic striving, is a mere inconvenience on the way to the thing that we consume, the product itself. And so I love to make, but I also love the closing of that thing. There's a wholeness to that is what the world is, to me, is actually about, in a way.
I think your art is heavily ridden by all of this tragedy that you describe, and yet you describe it also as an attempt of putting more beauty into the world. How do you perceive beauty, and what do you think it means for us as your audience? Yes, this is the type of beauty that we yearn for.
How do I perceive beauty?
Yeah.
What is beauty?
What is beauty, and what about the audience and beauty if they look at your work?
You know, I mean, it's a difficult question, what is beauty? And obviously everyone has different ideas about what is beautiful. I tend to think there is something that is essentially beautiful in itself, that is beautiful, should be, or is possibly beautiful. No, it's a difficult question, but that is essentially what beauty is, and I think that has something to do with authenticity, need, that something is created through a deep need for that thing to be created. I find these things in particular beautiful, that are simply reflections of our human struggle in some kind of way. That's what I personally stand in front of and am moved by. I find that more, to me, articulates the idea of beauty more than art, let's say, if we're talking about art that is purely attempting to convince us of something. I love art that just stands there and is what it is, and we relate to that on some subterranean kind of way. I find that, to me, that's what beauty is, something that moves me and that genuinely stirs my soul in some kind of way. And that's what I think what I try and do with the music and with the ceramics and all of this sort of stuff, is to make art that is not cynical and that allows us to be moved in some kind of way. So it's a very difficult question, what is beauty? But to me that's what it is. I don't know about the audience.
Well, I think it's a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What a okay.
I'm going to talk about you talk about therapeutical.
To talk about
therapeutical.
I've always been intrigued by that aspect of your work and the way you tell about it. My question is, how important is it if you make a work of art that is therapeutical to yourself? How important is it to share it with the public? Could it also be therapeutical if you held the figurines in your bedroom and no one?
To me personally, and maybe that's because I have the opportunity to be able to share it. Some people don't. Some people I know work. There's amazing, artists that just work away in their rooms and no one ever gets to see, and they open up their rooms and find all this treasure trove of stuff, and this artist kept these people alive, for sure. But for me personally, my art is for other people. It's not essentially for myself, even though it's trying to articulate the way I feel about things. I see it as something that has its true life beyond me, in the hands of the people who look at it or listen to it. So.
About the beginning of creating, often Rick spoken about how hard it is to write songs. That first moment when it's a blank page and the words aren't coming. It sounds like with the figurines, the materials kind of led you, the glaze, was that a more joyful experience?
There's nothing worse than trying to write a song. It's a terribly agonizing, I mean, to write the lyrics of a song, for me, it's very, very difficult, and I don't wish this upon anyone. But but to make the figurines was largely a sort of I would say a joyful experience.
And do you feel the materials being outside of you were helpful?
I didn't have any response. I didn't know. I didn't understand that what I was doing would end up in a museum. I was just trying to make a little devil, and it was just such fun. It was just fun to do this, and I didn't care whether they succeeded or not in any way. I wasn't under any pressure. I wasn't writing a song and thinking that, 500,000 people are going to listen to it and have some opinion about it or whatever. It was just done in innocence, and that's why it was so joyful. If I was to write if I was to make another set of devils, new ones, it'd be like, I think that's sort of the innocence would have gone, and it would be probably a more stressful, different thing. I don't know if you can hear me even. I've got a weird throat, so maybe this is not going to work. And Rachel has handed me a song that's unbelievably difficult to sing. So. I began to warm and chill to objects and their fields, a ragged cup, twisted mop, the face of Jesus in my soup, those sinister dinner deals, meal trolleys, wicked wheels, and a hook bone rising from my food, all things good or ungood. And the mercy seat is awaiting, and I think my head is a-burning. In a way I'm yearning to be done with all this measuring the truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die. Interpret sign and catalog, a blackened tooth-faced scarlet fog. The walls are bad black bottom kind, they are the sick breath in my hind. And I hear stories from the chamber how Christ was born into a manger, and like some ragged stranger died upon the cross. And might I say it seems so fitting, in its way, he was a carpenter by trade, or at least that's what I'm told. My good hand tattooed evil across his brother's fist. That filthy five did nothing to challenge or resist. In heaven his throne is made of gold, and the ark of his testament is stowed. A throne from which I'm told all history does unfold. Down here it's made of a wooden wire, and my body is on fire. And God is never far away. My kill hand is Code Evil. Wears a wedding band that's good. 'Tis a long-suffering shackle, collaring all that rebel blood. And the mercy seat is awaiting, and I think my head is burning. In a way I'm yearning to be done with all this measuring the truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die. And the mercy seat is a burning, and I think my head is glowing. In a way I'm hoping to be done with all these looks of disbelief. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die. And the mercy seat is a glowing, and I think my head is boiling. In a way that's spoiling all the fun with all these looks of disbelief. A lie for a lie and a truth for a truth. And anyway they had no proof, and I'm afraid I told a lie.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.